My name is Sajad Zalzala. Patients call me Dr. Z. I'd like to thank the Life Extension Advocacy Foundation for allowing me to present today. I'm proud to present the what's called a Pearl trial. We'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But first, let me jump right into a little bit about myself. I'm a physician. I consider myself an expert in telemedicine. I have extensive experience with working with several companies. I'm one of just a few doctors licensed in all 50 states. And I am the co-founder of AgelessRx, the sponsor of the trial. A little background here. So premature aging is the ultimate cause of disease. And my passion has always been, since medical school, to try to find and treat the underlying cause of diseases. And aging is the ultimate cause. You treat aging, and as you know, you prevent or treat a lot of the underlying chronic diseases that humans suffer from. What is AgelessRx? We launched back in October of 2019. We formerly called Qualitude. We were featured in a CNBC article. It's the first of its kind telemedicine platform to provide prescription therapies for longevity to help humans live longer and healthier. A little bit about telemedicine. Really, telemedicine is any form of medical treatment or therapy or testing where you're not in the same room with the doctor. So anything by email, by text, by message, by app, by video, by phone, those are all considered to be telemedicine. And before the pandemic, it was kind of a niche thing. Only about maybe 10% of doctors, 15% of doctors using it, and the pandemic accelerated telemedicine quite a bit. The longevity, I mean, I think most people listening to this already know, but it's the idea of kind of biohacking your way into living longer and healthier. So what's available today versus what we're trying to do? Most people are familiar with conventional anti-aging clinics or anti-aging therapies, and that differs slightly from longevity therapy. Anti-aging, when you think about an anti-aging clinic, the focus more is usually, cosmetics, hormone replacement, IV therapies for like vitamins and things like that. Longevity is the idea, again, like you can help patients live longer and healthier, increase their lifespan by using various different therapies, metformin, boosting NAD, senolytics, mTOR modulators, and we hope to go beyond because most likely you're going to need combination therapies in order to make a real difference. So we'd like to think that the future is here. When we launched, we started offering metformin NAD patches. We recently added low-dose naltrexone. There's a lot of demand and a lot of promise there, and we hope to be able to launch more services and products in the near future. Now, I'd just like to use this quote here from Dr. Nir Barzilai. He's a well-known physician at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine. He quoted that the wide public should be actively involved in evaluation studies, not just as test subjects, but as active and empowered citizen science. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to empower patients to be citizen science and participate in moving the longevity field forward. So what is PEARL? So PEARL stands for Participatory Evaluation of Aging with Rapamycin for Longevity. A little bit about rapamycin. Here's a molecule here on the right. It was discovered on an island known as Easter Island. It's called rapamycin because one of the native names for the island is Rapa Nui, if I'm saying that right. It was originally looked at as an antifungal agent, but then it was found at high doses to suppress the immune system. However, at pulse doses, it actually enhances the immune system. And we'll talk a little bit about that when we review the studies here. A well-known scientist, Matt Kamberline at the University of Washington, he's studying rapamycin in dogs. Well, he's doing this large dog trial, and one of the things he's focused on is rapamycin. And he's been, he's written about how rapamycin is currently the most effective and reproducible pharmacological approach for directly targeting the aging process. And then Dr. Blagoscloni, he's very well known in writing about rapamycin, and he says that if rapamycin mechanism of action does not slow down the aging, then everything we know about biology is wrong. So he's pretty confident that rapamycin is one of the keys to slow down aging. What's the function? It inhibits TOR, the target of rapamycin. M used to stand for mammalian. I'm not quite sure what it stands for anymore. It seems to change. But it's a protein kinase that plays a vital role in cellular regulation, cell growth, survival, metabolism, autophagy. And it's thought that as we get older, this pathway starts to break down and causes several diseases of aging that we see. There's TORC1 and there's TORC2. The focus is on TORC1, and the inhibition of TORC1 has been shown to improve neurological function, cardiac dysfunction, reverse of immune dysregulation, improve physical activity. It's been studied in mice and rats. Increases lifespan in mice, has a positive effect on the microbiome. In rats, it reduces food intake and increases grip strength. Dogs, there's a lot of interest in dogs, and there's a variety of different reasons why dogs are a very good model for human aging, because they share the same environment, they get a lot of the same age-related diseases, but they age quite a bit faster than we do. And so by figuring out what makes dogs age and help reverse that, then we can benefit ourselves as well. Again, going back to that University of Washington study, there was a article on it in the BBC Science Focus magazine. They're looking to recruit 80,000 dogs into this study and trial 500 dogs on rapamycin. But a small pilot study showed that low dose 3 times a week is well tolerated, improves cardiac function, which is a big issue for a lot of dog breeds, and increased physical activity, again, which is a big issue for dogs as they get older, and humans, obviously. So we talked about high doses is used by transplant clinics to reduce rejection of kidneys and things like that. But it's found that low doses has been shown to inhibit mTOR activity in humans, and is tolerated, pretty well tolerated. It's been shown to reduce cellular senescence and improve the aging in skin. And there's been a lot of interest in developing rapalogs. And one of the rapalogs that was studied actually improves the response to influenza vaccination, and is also being studied to help for COVID. Of course, what's a discussion these days without a little bit of COVID? So one of the rapalogs that's being studied was observed to upregulate the innate antiviral gene expression, and therefore this rapalog has potential to be a pan-antiviral immunotherapy. And that's not just COVID. I mean, it's pretty much all viral. Colds, flus, colds, influenza. There are hundreds of respiratory viruses that afflict humans. Basically, a rapalog is any molecule that's designed to mimic rapamycin and inhibit one or more aspects of the mTOR pathways. It could be a direct inhibition, indirect inhibition. But of course, just like any new drug, it could take years to develop. You got to establish safety profile, and of course, once it is developed, it's going to be very expensive coming to the market. Going back to Dr. Blagoscloni, there's no shortage of potential patients who unfortunately already employ self-medication, self-experimentation with rapamycin, but currently there's very few physicians who are willing to treat them and monitor them properly. So what's special about Pearl? It's a large-scale, double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled, what's called a phase 4 trial. Phase 4 just meaning that it's already it's an FDA-approved medication, so we're not looking for FDA approval. It's already been approved. We're just looking to kind of add data to the drug. And it's going to be one of the largest, if actually the largest so far, human aging trial on rapamycin. it's groundbreaking in many ways, and we'll talk about those. So we're going to be doing it in multiple phases. So far, we've developed the plan for phase 1 and phase 2. So phase 1, we'll be looking at 4 dosing schedules. We'll be looking at efficacy and safety evaluation. It's going to include 300 participants plus 75 placebo. Phase 2, we'll probably remove the placebo. We'll pick the best dose, and we'll increase the number of participants up to 1,000 or more. We may open the door up depending on demand and our capacity and things like that. We've scoured the literature, and we've come up with 4 carefully selected dosage: low dose, medium dose, and what's considered to be a high dose. Now, I just want to say that all these doses are well below the dose that's used for transplant patients, and it needs to be intermittent because you need time to recover. Recovery from this calorie restricted mimetic. You don't, like I said, if you activate or if you inhibit mTOR all the time, then you get an immunosuppression, and you don't want that, obviously. But so if you do a pulse dosing at what we think would be the right dose, one or more of these doses will hopefully turn out to be the right dose. Then you get the anti-aging effect without immunosuppression. In fact, if anything, we expect to see a immune boosting effect where you'll actually be more resistant to infection. We have extensive inclusion and exclusion criteria. You can look at our clinicaltrials.gov for a full list, and we'll also be publishing this summer as well. We're looking at our primary endpoint. It needs to be a clinical endpoint, so we're looking at visceral fat as determined by DEXA scan. Secondary endpoints, we'll be looking at things like bone density, adverse effects. And then there's several objectives. So in addition to the endpoints, we have objectives for the trial. So our primary objective, or one of our objectives, is to look at the safety profile of these doses of rapamycin. Tease out to see if there's any side effects that stick out, if there's any particular dose that has less side effects or more side effects. And we'll also do a 6-month interim analysis. So if the data looks good at 6 months, we may actually cut the phase 1 trial short and move on to phase 2 and enroll more people. And we'll be looking, our first objective, we'll be looking at things like CBC, CMP, things like that, looking at health surveys, looking for side effect profiles. Objective 2 is a long-term efficacy. Now, obviously, we can't wait, 20, 30, 40 years for disease of aging to show up. So we're looking at various different biomarkers, and as well as some health surveys to help us determine whether rapamycin is actually helping with the aging process. And there's been a lot of work. I mean, we're not the first. There's been a lot of work on looking at various different biomarkers to help determine biological age. Objective 2 is efficacy. Again, we talked about that, looking at various different markers here. We'll talk a little bit more about those markers in a minute. There's the DNA methylation clock on the Illumina Epic chip. Dr. Horvath, he's very famous for his clock using the CpG methylation. Dr. Levine, Morgan Levine, she's come up with a way to kind of couple the DNA methylation with the blood panel, and has come up with this DNA M phenoage, and we'll be looking to include that as well. mTOR assessment, we're looking at different ways to actually assess the mTOR and autophagy pathways. We're looking at including microbiome, because microbiomes, the bacteria in our gut is more of an organ rather than just bystander. And there's a lot of promise that if you improve the microbiome, then you can improve somebody's long-term health. Objective 3 is to help roll out the rapamycin therapy on a much broader scale using our established telemedicine platform. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. We've gotten a lot of inquiries about including rapamycin on our telemedicine platform. Unfortunately, unlike metformin, which has got a very long, very well-established safety record and well-established safety profile, drugs like rapamycin and other more experimental therapies haven't really been studied as extensively, and so need this type of trial and more trials in order to to safely roll it out to healthy individuals. So that's what our objective is: to study it, assess it, figure out what the best dose is, because there's really been no comparison on human dosage for longevity, and then roll it out using our telemedicine platform. And like I mentioned before, we operate in all 50 states, and we hope to expand that to other countries in the future. Going back to Dr. Caroline, in a paper, Rapamycin Alzheimer's disease, not only does rapamycin treatment increase lifespan, but also delays or even reverses nearly every age-related disease or decline in function, which has been studied. And let's talk a little bit about the cost here. I mean, clinical trials are always going to be a little costly. However, the way that we're doing it is probably going to be very cost effective. We'll be using telemedicine and various different techniques to try to reduce the cost. The total cost we estimate, if we want to enroll all 375 patients and pay for all the tests and things like that, total cost would be somewhere in the neighborhood about $800,000 to $1 million. And so if you break that down to 375 people, it'd be about $180 per month per patient. Our goal is to try to make this as accessible and affordable as possible. So we want to raise some funds to try to offset the cost. So we hope to raise somewhere, as much as we can. I mean, the more we can raise, the more we can reduce the cost to the participants. But we can kind of keep it simple. Not like maybe one of the biggest costs to the participants would be the cost of some of these more advanced testing. We could reduce the number of testing, and we can actually reduce the number of participants and get started as on a much smaller budget. Obviously, the larger budget we have, the more impact we can make with this trial. Now, why is this a groundbreaking trial? Because the first large-scale clinical trial assessment on rapamycin, but it's only the beginning. So this is a starting point. So it's not about rapamycin. I mean, obviously this trial is about rapamycin, but it's not going to end there. The goal. The ultimate goal is to study other therapies, rapamycin with combinations such as metformin, other combination therapies, other therapies that are look promising, whether it's repurposed drugs or natural products. There's really no limit on what we would be able to study once we have this clinical trial and data processing machinery that we're building. Now, we perceive this as a paradigm shift in clinical trials and research. The old paradigm shift, the old paradigm is, biotech companies starting up, looking at single or maybe a couple new molecules so they can patent them. It's a very expensive endeavor. The median cost of bringing a new drug to market is around $1 billion. And it takes about 12 years. Only about 5 out of 5,000 molecules ever make it for preclinical testing. Only 1 out of those 5. So only 1 out of 5,000 molecules ever actually make it to approval. And that's why you'll see that new drug costs are anywhere between, on the low end, $500 per month, all the way up to $10,000, $100,000 a month. I mean, I'm sure you've all read about, the $1 million treatment for certain cancers and things like that only extend life by like 6 months. It's very expensive to develop these drugs, as you can see. So basically, the drug companies kind of offset the cost of all the rest of this, all these failures and all these other costs by kind of hitting it big, so to speak, with the drug that does make it through. And I'm not against this model at all. I think we need new molecules. I think we need new drugs. It's just not the path that we've chosen to take, because I think we're gonna need new molecules along with repurposed, but nobody's really looking at repurposed. So that's kind of where the paradigm shift. I'm not going to say nobody, but if you look at the studies on repurposed drugs, they tend to be very small and pilot trials. So and the reason is, unlike new molecules where you can patent them and then sell them for large amounts of money, you can't really repatent existing molecules or off-patent molecules, and they tend to be generic. They tend to be inexpensive, and so the way we're going to approach this is by studying therapies, making sure they're safe and effective, and then offering them on our telemedicine platform. And so that's kind of where we'll be able to benefit not only us as a company, but also patients by expanding the number of therapies available. And of course, like we talked about, encourages citizen science, and we can focus, unlike the old model where it's single molecule, maybe a couple molecules at a time. We can look at combination therapies, come up with various different protocols, various different stacks and things like that, and study those rather than just hypothesize that they're going to work together. So preparing for the future, PRO will allow us to build a research infrastructure and platform to accelerate the practical clinical investigation of various different therapies. We want to scale up and roll out these therapies to a vast population, and only by giving access to a large number of people to these therapies will you make a difference in human aging, because that's our ultimate goal. I mean, premature aging is a tragedy. I mean, there's no reason why patients should spend the last 20, 30 years of their life, in a slow decline and frailty. There needs to be a different way. Now, what can you do to help? There are several things. If you're listening to this presentation, one is we plan to have a crowdfunding campaign, the details of which will be announced probably in the next few weeks. So direct monetary contributions. Obviously, if you're somebody who's passionate about it, you can reach out to us, and we'll be more than happy to accept funds to allocate to this trial. You can spread the word. We're going to need people who are interested in enrolling in the trial as well. And then, if you have any experience or anybody who can be a potential collaborator, we've been speaking to several people as potential collaborators. We've had some conversations with Dr. Horvath, Dr. Levine, and obviously the more collaborators we get on board, the larger the impact, and the more we can do with this trial. All right, thank you very much. Thanks for listening. If you have any questions, you can contact me at doctor@agelessrx.com or the research team, research@agelessrx.com. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Thank you very much.